So good morning, everyone. And for those who I am yet to have the pleasure of meeting, my name is Nadia, and I am a second-year PhD candidate from Swinburne, as well as an affiliated PhD candidate here at the ARC Menu Centre. And along with my supervisory team, Charlie and Linus, my research topic on streamlining designer-to-client interactions seeks to explore the opportunities of using Image Gen AI as a design tool in order to support architects as well as engage clients in the architectural design process. And so this is specifically because the language used between architects and clients can often be quite ambiguous, and so often can also lead into further errors later in the design process. The Australian Institute of Architects alone have expressed that the modest number of complaints regarding architectural services may have been generally avoided through improved communication. However, despite such known challenges, only the digital augmentation as well as simulation of designer-to-client interactions have been examined, specifically to understand the different dynamics that occur within such contexts. And so since more human-centered socio-cultural and socio-technological approaches to understanding designer-to-client interactions have been called to further explore how human designers as well as clients think and engage with emerging technologies like AI. And so today, Image Gen AI has eased the instant translation of text into sophisticated visual outputs. While on the one hand, architects are greater supported to visualize large volumes of design ideas, clients, on the other hand, are better supported to engage in different design activities with little reliance on traditional design skills to do so. And so hence, there is a great opportunity for Image Gen AI to not only support designer-to-client interactions, but also to greater understand the new dynamics of designer-to-client interactions within the age of Image Gen AI. And so this is why my research project aims to understand how Image Gen AI tools can support designers as well as engage architects early in the architectural design process, specifically through gaining a greater understanding of a best practice use of Image Gen AI for efficacious visualizations in order to support dialogue efficiencies in architecture. And so to understand how these two different groups, architects and clients, engage as well as perceive and use Image Gen AI, my research has adopted the design research methodology, specifically for its views on conducting research in order to understand design, in order to then develop a support for the design practice. And so following the DRM, my research project is divided into the following 4 phases of evidencing, understanding, developing, and evaluating, which I have now progressed exactly halfway through. And so as a quick recap, phase 1 involved a literature review as well as an autoethnographic study. What this phase involved was exploring different aspects of design process, cognition, as well as visualization from both a traditional design perspective as well as an AI integrated design perspective. And so from phase 1, what we disseminated the learnings into is the following design process model. And so what this model highlights is one, specifically the prompting, variating, and selecting acts of designing through Image Gen AI, the externalization and interpretation process of designing through distinct acts of seeing and moving image as well as text-based design, and finally, the iterative, divergent, and convergent processes of design thinking commonly conveyed in established design models like the double diamond. And so following phase 1, phase 2 implemented the model through 29 different design experiments. And the purpose of this study was specifically to explore the similarities and differences between architect and non-designer individuals and how they interact, as well as how well they are satisfied with using Image Gen AI for design. And so what we found from the study was specifically that there were commonalities or similarities in command use or Image Gen AI use among the 2 cohorts. However, with the 2 cohorts, we also found that there were significant differences in the level of satisfaction that they had towards using Image Gen AI for designing. More specifically, when architects were prompting, we found that architects tend to describe a single or the same idea in multiple different ways. whereas non-designers tend to build on their initial design ideas. And so this is further manifested through an architect's way of using synonyms as opposed to a non-designer's use of conjunctions such as with in order to build on their prompts. When variating, or what we know more commonly as iterating on a design, architects tend to use more prompting, so using text in order to vary or diversify their design ideas. Non-designers, when they are iterating on design, tend to select an image in order to build further on their designs. Again, this is manifested through an architect's consistent repetitive use of text prompting versus a non-designer's use of image and text prompting to iterate on their design. When selecting a design for best fit, architects tend to select the first images generated, whereas the non-designers tend to select the last few images generated. And so for us, this sort of informed how design exploration was conducted or behaved through ImageGenAI itself. So specifically, architects, they would extensively explore in order to revert back to the initial design ideas, whereas non-designers would extensively explore and be inspired by the images generated and therefore select one of the last few images. And so what ultimately phase 2 told us is that while there are opportunities for architects and clients to share decision-making responsibilities, on the one hand, architects should lead in activities of brief or concept development as they are more skilled in terms of prompting, whereas on the other hand, clients should lead in activities of inspiration seeking or idea generation as they are more skilled in being inspired or gaining ideas from ImageGenAI. And so following phase 2, the future steps of my research will include the 2 following phases. In phase 3, what we will do is take learnings from phase 1 and 2 and develop it into a set of design specifications and criteria for the design of a toolkit. And so I will also use this starting question to develop and start designing that. Following phase 3, we will then implement the model as well as the toolkit in a real-world practice setting. And specifically, what I would like to gain a little bit of an idea from you guys is just the expectations of what you would expect to have from this toolkit in order to support your current approaches to designer-to-client interactions or communication. And so to conclude, there has been a call for more human-centered, socio-cultural and socio-technological approaches to understanding the dynamics of designer-to-client interactions. From the study today, we have understood that ImageGenAI can not only support architects and designers' communication, but also provide a deeper understanding of how designers and clients interact specifically with ImageGenAI. And so this is exactly what I'm going to hopefully try and explore further over the next 6 months of my PhD.
Everyone's looking at me. Questions?
You handle this?
I can handle it. Questions from the audience, please. It's an early start. Nobody has questions? Oh yeah, there. Here we go.
So you said there were 29 experiments. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit more detail of your participants, like what sort of, how many institutional clients, how many individual clients, how many architects you were looking at, and what the spread was across the 29.
Sure. So I initially wanted to get like 30. We were just short on one. But roughly we had, out of the 29 participants, we had 15 architects and then 14 non-designers. So what we mean by non-designers are just people with completely zero design knowledge. And that was for the purposes of clients who would commission projects and not have any sort of design knowledge in order to input or even sort of involve themselves in the design process. So of the non-designers, we had a couple of people from a business background, so marketing, accounting. We also had some people from social interaction studies. And then we also had a couple of people from biomed and the science backgrounds. So it was quite a diverse cohort that we had, which was really good in order to get that diversity of what clients would get.
or actual clients or
So
people who are commissioning?
most of them were students because ethics only allowed us to recruit from the campus itself. But I did get a couple of other people from other universities who were studying science and other PhDs to come and just interact with ImageGen AI.
I was wondering whether you could get some of the facilities people on campus, people who actually have to commission buildings.
I think that was
A very different
that was
breed
the
from
intent,
architects.
yeah. But it was kind of hard to recruit beyond sort of the university. But yes.
Quickly, Steve, and then Shadi.
Yes, so there's a clear behavioural difference there between the two groups in how they use prompting, and I guess a little bit of Jen's question there around the non-designers. Did they come with a clear idea in the first place of what they wanted? Because my reaction to the way, I'm not an architect by the way, but I've worked with that group for a while. My reaction to the way the architects behaved was like there was a clear idea, and then they were trying to push the boundaries of it and test it to see if their idea fell apart, but then they went back to the core idea in the first place. And I wondered if you'd gone through the thinking of what behavioural training, sort of aspects of the architect's workplace might lead to that behaviour.
I think I have discussed with my supervisors quite a lot, and we did take into consideration that architects have that previous knowledge of architecture, and therefore coming in, and we did give them a design brief from an architectural discipline in order to sort of start them off. So architects, as soon as they saw the design brief, they had an instant idea of what they wanted to create. I guess their explorations with ImageGen AI, and I'm talking about the broader architects, there were of course like little minute nuances where architects would behave the way non-designers did. But architects overall, they came up with an initial idea, most of them, and they sort of iterated, played around with ImageGen AI and found that it didn't do what they wanted to do. So ultimately they explored the tool's capabilities, but ended up going back to the initial design ideas. So yeah.
Thank you. Personally, I'm an architect, and I worked the last 5 years in engineering consultancy, international firm, and I noticed there's two kinds of architects. Architects who work in architecture firm, mainly looking for design concepts, and there's architects who work for engineering consultancy, who are more looking for solving problems and built environment. And my observation as an architect within different engineers disciplines, we more have the whole approach, we can imagine the thing. So I'm curious have you included engineering consultancy in your architects category?
So we haven't
Like McDonald's, AECOM, WSP, these
We haven't included that, but we had a civil engineer who's worked in architecture and a couple of other computational designers who's worked in engineering.
Is he categorized as a designer or non-designer?
They are categorized as architecture because they worked in architecture. So they've worked in architectural projects. So, yeah.
My question is extension of Jen's question in terms of demographic, and probably will help you out if you can classify and benchmark. Do a kind of like benchmarking that enable you to compare apple with apple, and that benchmarking and criteria will probably help you out. For example, is the age criteria part of inclusion exclusion criteria? What are the actual inclusion exclusion criteria through your recruiting? Would help a lot.
Okay.
Have you recruited within the age of 18 to 26, younger age, medium, more expert architect? What are you comparing? Because if you're comparing experienced architect with just fresh graduates or just students, I imagine that the data would be different, but probably you're in a better phase of your research to tell us.
Yeah, no, we did specify the inclusion to include anyone that has completed an undergrad in architecture. So we had young, fresh graduates as well as some experienced 20 plus years architects within the demographic.
And you imagine that 29 sample size would be enough to generalize some of the finding, or you need more sample?
I would like to have more, but I don't know if I'm allowed to have that extra time to spend on this study because I still have 2 more phases to go, but yes.
Probably this just a recommendation that narrowing down the scope and a kind of like at least the category of the recruiting would help you, because you probably find it very hard to recruit more than 100 participants to diversify the findings. So probably it would be better to focus on a smaller sample with certain criteria, and then gives you a roadmap for future study.
Our 29 participants include both clients and designers?
Yes. So that's, in total it was 15 architects and then 14 non-designers.
Okay. And how was the experiment running? Was it in a workshop format, or it was like individual approach? Were they sitting together, or they were completely in a different environment, given the same question, the same problem to find a solution with AI?
So and I'll try and scroll back. So the design experiments were, this is pretty much the schedule for the 1-hour sessions that we had. So it was a one-on-one session, just me and the researcher as well as the participant. That was just to avoid people talking and getting ideas from each other, because we purely wanted to know the individual. And so it started off with just a quick training session, and that's where we limited sort of the use of AI to just the very basic sort of foundational uses, so that it's not overwhelming for non-designers, but it also controls the architect to just use these ones. So we sort of set a benchmark through that, but it was a one-on-one session.
Perfect. I'm happy to participate. If you need more.
Good. Are there any other questions? Yes, please, Carl.
Thanks a lot. Very interesting project. One question referring to your initial research. Have you looked across other industries where image generation is already kind of mainstream or practiced? Specifically, I think around film and movie industry. We've seen entire storyboards and pitch decks kind of driven by AI-generated images.
I haven't looked at other industries just yet, because the PhD scope is within architecture. Definitely reading a couple of things in the film and photography specifically, but not as in-depth, I guess, with the architecture, but yes.
Good. If these are the last questions, then I would like to thank you, Nadia, for your presentation.